We gather together during this Holy Week, today on this Maundy Thursday. We come to our fourth reading as we come to Jesus before Pilate. When they had bound Jesus, they led him from Caiaphas to the hall of the judgment and gave him over to Pontius Pilate, the governor. It was early. They themselves did not go into the judgment hall, so they might not be defiled, but might eat the Passover. Pilate went out to them and said, "What charge do you bring against this man?" They answered and said to him, "If he were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you." Then Pilate said to him, "Well, then take him and judge him according to your law." The Jews said to him, "It's not lawful for us to put any man to death." So the word of Jesus was fulfilled, signifying by what kind of death he would die. The charges they brought against him were, "We found this man perverting the nation and forbidding us to pay taxes to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ, a king." And Pilate entered into the judgment hall and asked Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you say this for yourself, or did others say it to you about me?" Pilate answered, "Do you take me for a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priest had given you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would have fought that I should not be given over to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not in the ways of this place." Pilate therefore said to him, "Are you a king then?" Jesus answered, "You say rightly that I am a king. I was born and I came into the world that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone that is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" After he said this, he went out again to the Jews and said to them, "I find no fault in this man." The chief priests kept laying one charge after another against him, but he answered not a word. Pilate questioned him, saying, "Do you answer nothing? See how many charges they lay against you." Jesus answered not a word. Pilate was utterly amazed. He said to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no case against this man." They pressed their charges more vehemently. "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, beginning from Galilee to this place." When Pilate heard of Galilee, he asked whether this man was a Galilean. When he learned that he belonged in Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem for those days. When Herod saw Jesus, he was delighted, for he had long wished to see him because of what he had heard of him, and he hoped to see him do a miracle. He questioned Jesus repeatedly, but he gave no answer. The chief priests and scribes stood there and vehemently accused him. Herod and his soldiers mocked him. They put him on a splendid robe and sent him back to Pilate. Herod and Pilate became friends with each other that same day, for before this, they had been at enmity with one another. Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people and said to them, "You have brought this man before me as one subverting the people. See now, I have examined him before you and have found nothing in this man guilty of any of your charges against him, and neither did Herod, for he has sent him back to us. Mark this, he has done nothing worthy of death. I'll have him punished and release him." Now, at the feast, it was the governor's custom to release to the crowd any one prisoner for whom they asked. They had then a notorious prisoner named Barabbas. He was in the prison with the rebels who had committed murder in the uprising in the city. Pilate knew that was out of malice that the chief priests handed Jesus over. Therefore he said to them, "Do you want me to release for you Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Christ?" The chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. Pilate asked them again, "Which of these two do you want me to release to you?" And they cried out all together, saying, "Away with this man, and release for us Barabbas." When Pilate was sitting in the judgment seat, his wife sent him a message: "Do not have anything to do with this man. I have suffered much over him today in a dream." Again, Pilate addressed them, for he wished to release Jesus. He said to them, "What shall I do then with Jesus, who is called Christ? What shall I do with him whom you call the King of the Jews?" They all cried out, "Crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Why? What evil has he done? I found no guilt worthy of death in him. I therefore punish him and let him go." They cried out all the louder, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers of the governor led him away to the praetorium. They gathered the whole band of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put on a purple robe. When they had woven a crown of thorns, they put it on his head and a reed in his right hand. They knelt before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. They knelt down and did him homage. Pilate went out and said to them, "See, I bring him out to you, that you may know that I find him not guilty." And so Jesus came out, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Behold, the man." When the chief priests and officers saw him, they cried, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him, for I do not find him guilty." The Jews answered him, "We have a law, and by that law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God." When Pilate heard this, he was more afraid and went again into the judgment hall and said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" Jesus gave him no answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you refuse to speak to me? Do you not know that I have the power to crucify you and I have the power to release you?" Jesus answered, "You would have no power at all over me unless it had been given to you from above. For that reason, he who handed me over to you has the greater sin." This prompted Pilate to go on trying to release him. But the Jews cried out, "If you let this man go, you're no friend of Caesar. Everyone who makes himself a king sets himself against Caesar." When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out, sat down in the judgment seat in a place that is called the pavement, or in Hebrew, Gabbatha. It was the preparation of the Passover, about the 6th hour. He said to the Jews, "Behold, your king." They cried out, "Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to him, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priest answered, "We have no king but Caesar." When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, rather a riot was, took water, washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of the blood of this man. See to it yourselves." Then all the people responded, "His blood be on us and on our children." Then Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, gave sentence that should be as they demanded. He released to them Barabbas, for whom they asked, the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder. He had Jesus flogged and gave him over to their will to be crucified. The soldiers mocked him, stripped him, put his own clothes on him, and led him out to crucify him. This is the passion of the Lord.